All right, it is Thanksgiving week, and we are digging for wisdom even on the holiday week. I know all you guys have your kids running roughshod all over the house. We do too, but we're still bringing you the knowledge because that's what we do. That's Diggsy over there. It's me, Wizzy. The digging part is over there. The wisdom part is over here. Yeah, right. Wisdom part's over there too. But we're going to give it a shot here. And man, the people are practicing on Thanksgiving, so it's a wonderful time of the year for those students. I know there's half the field that's not practicing and they're upset about it and probably just gorging themselves on sweet potato pie or what have you because they don't get to play anymore and they had to turn in their shoulder pads, helmets, and all that. And it's a depressing time for them, but we're going to concentrate on the part that's not depressing, which is the players that are playing. And man, it's the Thanksgiving holiday, but by far my favorite holiday of the year, especially growing up, being around family all the time. Ever since then, I've moved away from family. It's not the family unit is a little bit shorter on Thanksgiving Day. Plus, I have to make sure I don't eat too much, so I'm ready to go out there and shoot. This week, I'm shooting 5 games between Friday and Saturday, so I'm putting myself to work. So I know I can't put too much turkey down, but Diggsy, you love this kind of holiday too, man. Tell me why you love it.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Now, on the functional level, Ward, one thing you know about me that the listeners, some listeners may know about me, some listeners may not know, is I'm a little quirky. I'm like the Corey Seager of high school football, and you got to deal with it all the time because you're like Diggs, let's tape at 10 a.m. And I look at you and I say, Ward, do you not know me yet? 10 a.m. I don't do 10 a.m. Like I don't do mornings, and most people do. I'm Corey Seager. You know, I have my routine. I do it well. And if you can work past it, you do well. And food is another one of my bits where I don't eat turkey. I don't eat ham. So we do a little Cracker Barrel meatloaf catering. We get some meatloaf, and I like most of the sides of Thanksgiving. I like the green bean casserole, the banana pudding, and some mashed potatoes and whatnot. But when you're eating turkey and chicken and ham, I don't like any of that stuff. We got meatloaf. Cracker Barrel meatloaf will be our main event. Do you have any Thanksgiving quirks, Ward? Or are you kind of the traditional? You like your turkey and your stuffing and your cowboy? I know you love your cowboys on Thanksgiving. That's something you really enjoy.
Please give me a break with that. I don't need to hear it. As a matter of fact, I think I texted you this after watching that ridiculous Commanders game against the Giants. I immediately went to my phone and bought tickets to a movie right when the Cowboys Commanders game is supposed to start on Thursday so I can make sure not to see any of that nonsense. But I'm sure I'll get plenty of texts telling me that my team stinks, probably from my own family members, to be honest with you. But, I eat the traditional stuff, obviously, but my favorites are obviously deviled eggs. I love deviled eggs. And then my biggest thing is my mom's peach cheesecake, which is by far the best dessert. And you can take that pumpkin pie and you can put it aside. I'll get to it Saturday or Sunday. But Thursday and Friday, it's all about the peach cheesecake. She lived and grew up on a peach farm. She knows all the different recipes with peaches. She threw it in a cheesecake once. She didn't even like cheesecake, but she wanted to make sure her son was bound to be diabetic or something. So she threw me some peach cheesecake. I fell in love with it. And we have it every Thanksgiving. It's terrific. That's I guess it's not a quirk, but that's something I have to have every Thanksgiving meal.
That's my guy, Ward, right there. And I think about Thanksgiving. You talked about how we're going to have 160 teams, at least the UIL teams. I know we got some private school teams and some 6-man teams that are going to be practicing. But Ward, I'm thankful for our audience this year. I think of our audience, and we have, I think, a higher caliber of football listener who listens to this podcast. They're a little bit more classy, a little bit more kind. Usually in the football season, I kind of just stay, you made fun of this a few times, Ward. I just stay elevated in the press box while you're down with the people dealing with complaints about me and this, that, or the other. Like, where's Diggs? I want to tell him something. But during the playoffs, I go down and, I like to take pictures and get a feel of things. And one of the reasons I like to get a feel for things, this almost sounds sadistic in a way. But, with every winner, there's also a loser. And with there's a loser, there's a humanity to that. There's a humanity to a whole community's hopes are let down. The whole team, a lot of players are playing their last game, and you see players crying. And I like to be in that moment, not to revel in their sadness, but just to experience it with them because I feel their sadness. When you see just that, that huge play, people bigger than me who are just in tears. You really understand the humanity of high school football and how much it meant to them and how much it means to the community. And some of these players, it's the last time they're going to play. I get to talk to coaches, and I've had players lose who come up to me and hug me and say, "Thank you for the coverage, Diggs. We appreciate it." And I've had coaches who have lost and who could very well be right to be mad at me. Waxahachie is one. I'm not saying I was disrespectful to Waxahachie on this podcast, but I was wrong about Waxahachie on this podcast quite a bit. They played their hearts out against Rockwall. I think it could be arguable that in a different world they should have won that game against Rockwall. A couple of mistakes. And, their coaches are coming up and thanking us for the coverage. And I think that speaks to the class of a lot of the coaches who listen to this podcast, a class of just that, the job of coach, and what they do and how they handle things. So I'm very grateful. I have a lot of gratitude for them. And thank you for listening to our podcast. Thank you for amplifying what we do, even if it's just a clip to get your players riled up because, you disagree with what we say or you disagree with our take on it. It's all class and all love at the end of the day. And I just wanted to thank the audience for that. So thank you, Inside High School Sports audience and Digging for Wisdom podcasters, for being great people. Even if you disagree with us, you're still kind and great in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I didn't know where we were going to go with this. You brought the idea up 2 years ago. This is our second year doing it. You have a lot of knowledge that you want to get out, and it doesn't usually get out on just your Friday night dumps. You thought of this idea, and I was like, all right, we'll give it a shot. And we did it without video the first year. This year we did it with video, and I was like, I don't know. I kind of like being, heard, maybe not seen. But I don't think, I shoot 2 games a night, Thursday and Fridays. I don't know what that equals. I mean, during the regular season, that equals to 22 games, 23, somewhere between 22 and 30 if I get out on Saturday. And I can probably, there's a handful of games where somebody hasn't come up and talked to me about watching our podcast, where they wouldn't normally because we didn't usually have video. So, I want to thank the people as well, because we talk about this all the time. This couldn't be done in Boise, Idaho. This couldn't be done probably in Chicago or somewhere in Vermont, places like that. This is where the lifeblood of high school football is. Everybody knows it. The whole world knows it because you just use Coach TikTok over there from Forney as a perfect example. He's got 5 million likes because they want to know what's going on. And how can I have the same knowledge as a Texas high school football coach? So when you say people come up to you and you're a little bit more, straightforward with your thoughts, and that I am, because I have a show that I would like people to watch on Sundays, so I can't get deep into it like you do, but you do, and they know it's coming from a place of wisdom. It's coming from a place of knowledge. You're not hating on anybody for the sake of hating. You're telling them what they want to know. So I'm thankful for the coaches too. Another thing that some of these players can be thankful for, as we're going to go through these games, as thankful for the introduction of the cold ice bath, especially for some of these running backs that we're going to talk about that have gotten 30 or more carries. And that's where you're going to go when it comes to this round of the playoffs. If you got a strong running game and you can milk that clock, you're going to go far. So thank you, whoever invented the cold tub, the ice bath, because I know there's a ton of people sitting in it last week after some of these rushing performances we saw this past week and going into this week as well.
Absolutely. And we did get to see some great running games, and we are headed to the final 16, Ward, and we're getting to the point where I'm really going to need you, and Houston Ward is going to have to come out and be a leader, because I'm seeing some things, I'm seeing some trends, and when you don't have, we have some calibration, like we got to see Houston King play Allen earlier, so we kind of have that north versus south calibration. But, Allen has gotten significantly better, and then they've had to be different because of injuries, and King has had some ups and downs. So it's hard. And we get some of these games, like we're going to talk about Spring Westfield and Rockwall, where there's absolutely zero correlation. It's like two islands playing their own world, and now they're playing each other for the first time. And we just have to figure it out based on what we see and statistics, trying to figure it out. But one thing I think I'm very proud about, Ward, is we did our bracket naming this year. We named our brackets, and we have 16 brackets that we've named in 6A and 5A, and 14 of them make sense still. So I think we're doing pretty good with that.
We were good on the bracket naming, including the first bracket name that we're going to talk about, which is the North Crowley bracket. Because let's get started, man. 6A Division I. North Crowley's playing up at the Star against Prosper. Prosper, as we know, and we're going to talk about it as well when we get to Tomball, they're just the teams that keep playing late into the postseason like they always do, but they're coming up to a freaking buzzsaw known as North Crowley, and they don't care that they haven't had the greatest competition during the year. Their toughest games, you asked last week about Ted asked you what the Louisville toughest game was. Well, the toughest one for North Crowley was Lovejoy, right? And they had to break that game up into two parts because of the rainstorm. Well, this is probably going to be their toughest one now. So tell me what you think about North Crowley and Prosper Saturday afternoon, which is going to be our game of the week on the show, by the way.
Game of the week, and well, it should be. There are definitely a couple of different angles you can look at when it comes to this game, because you do have the element that you just pointed out that North Crowley hasn't really played anybody. Even though we are now 13, this is going to be their 13th game. They played Trinity. Trinity's no longer in the playoffs. And they played Lovejoy. And Lovejoy is two classes below them. And now we've got Prosper. Prosper is our reigning and defending 6A Region 1 champions. And they're feeling very disrespected at the fact that just about everybody's going to be picking North Crowley to win this game. A couple of elements that I look at when I'm looking at this game. First of all, I really like what Prosper has done in coaching this year. If you look at their game last week against Lake Highlands, they ran the ball 90% of the time. They only threw the ball like 2 or 3 times, and they ran the ball because they saw that was the matchup. Other games this year, they've thrown the ball 90% of the time. And there are coaches at this juncture of the season, like, we have our offense, we do what we do, we win or lose with it. Prosper will change it. Prosper will do what gives them the best chance to win against the defense. And that tells me that they're still doing a great coaching job over there, and they're still learning and adapting. Some coaches, we are who we are at this point of the year. Prosper is still evolving. And North Crowley, they have won all, they've given us all the style points, but they don't have that signature win yet. And in this run, they don't have a signature win. You could say last year they had a chance to get their signature win against Prosper, but Prosper continues to take care of business. When I look at Prosper, I know Prosper and their radio crew are really parroting the fact that they held Deontay Jean to only like 160 yards. Like, we kept him down. He only got 160 against us. See, look at us. Their run defense is a little bit suspect. And I know it's partially because of injuries this year, but it is what it is. And I think North Crowley is going to be the biggest team they've seen this year. It's going to be the most athletic team this year. But again, there is that reasonable doubt there because North Crowley hasn't played anybody. North Crowley has looked great in games where they are clearly the better team, but now that they're playing a team that's going to be well coached, that has been there, how are they going to play? I think of these small schools, Ward. I think of like Brock and how Brock wins all these games in the playoffs, 69-0, 59-0. But when they play Paradise, when they play a really good team, it's like 18-14 because, all of a sudden it gets real quick because they're finally matched against a team that has the talent they do. I think Prosper does have the talent they do. So I think there is a reasonable belief that Prosper is going to be competitive in this game. But I look at the D1 talent that North Crowley has. I look at the way they've won the games. There's nothing that's telling me that they're not a 3-touchdown favorite in this game, but something tells me they're not going to win by 3 touchdowns. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. I think we're going to see the heart of Prosper. But at the end of the day, I think North Crowley is at least a 2-score favorite.
I think so as well, but I completely agree with that. Prosper's not going to let it happen like that. It's been proven in the past. And North Crowley does have a unsung running back. We don't really talk about it. We've never talked about him on this podcast, and it's not really talked about it out there. Ashton Cyril, 1,300 yards, 24 touchdowns. He's a smaller back. He's not one of the Division I guys that you're talking about. Cornelius Warren and Chris Jimerson are the guys that, when you talk about Division I guys, are them. But Ashton Cyril does what he's supposed to do, which is get in the end zone. If you want to see him any Friday night, you just go to the end zone and just wait there. He'll be there eventually. 24 touchdowns. And I think with the problems you're saying Prosper has holding back the running game, I think Cyril could have another big game for them. And even Jimerson, he's almost got 1,000 yards rushing from the quarterback position. This could be a tough situation where it's going to be – I'm with you, 2-score game, but it's going to be hard to keep it at that 2-score. Now, maybe that's the momentum they need to turn around and win the thing. Prosper can post this stuff and say, hey, look, they say we can't even get to 2 scores. Well, we're going to win by 2 scores. We'll see if that happens.
And all credit to Nathan Tinbarge. Like, he has not been considered a running quarterback all year. I mean, he can run. I mean, he's got some statistics, but, in the game against Lake Highlands, he was the leading rusher. It wasn't Deontay Dean. So, the fact that all of their parts can play in different roles and complementary roles, Prosper's going to be a hard out for sure. But I just think, if we did old school pick 'em ward, we put North Crowley's 22 and Prosper's 22 out there, and we said we had to pick 22 from that. I think we're probably going to pick 15 or 16 of the North Crowley kids and 5 or 6 of the Prosper kids. That's not to say that the Prosper kids aren't good. That offensive line is one of the best offensive lines I've seen this year. But North Crowley's finally got the first offensive line that they're going to see that's kind of like that. In the game against Allen, where they saw probably the next best offensive line, that was a 37-36 shootout kind of a game. So now I'm thinking to myself, well, Allen took them to 37 and it was able to score pretty much at will with them. How are they going to stop North Crowley? And I don't think they are, but I do think they're going to be able to score a little bit against North Crowley, but I don't think they're going to be able to match them score for 48 minutes.
Well, in the lower part of that deal, Allen's taking on Midland Legacy. I got a chance to see half of the Midland Legacy, and that's a team that's got some explosive power. I mean, Trinity wasn't doing anything against them, stopping them. That game could have been 66-55 because the first drive they got down to the one, started snapping the ball over the quarterback's head left and right. But they got a running back, Damian Johnson. He went for 349 and 4 touchdowns. And we've seen Allen. Well, you saw him in the first round, but we've had him on the show twice, and they're nickel and diming their way out of these games. They're winning them, but they're close calls. Your thoughts against Midland Legacy, because that's still a West Texas team coming in here, and they're taking on Allen where they're playing at Shotwell, right? So it's a neutral site there for them. But what do you think about this game? Can Allen pull this one off, and is the Legacy offense going to be stopped by the Allen defense?
One thing that's kind of not fair, and you see this quite a bit in these West Texas versus DFW games, when you get it out of the area, it's basically a West Texas game. It's basically a home game for Midland Legacy. Yeah, it's 50-50, but when they're out there at Shotwell, that's a familiarity. That's a West Texas kind of a feel to it. So Allen, it seems like it's a lot more inconsistent for Allen to take their crowd out there than it is for Midland. Midland's going to be, we're loving this. We're going to head out there. We're going to make a day of it. Whereas Allen's probably not going to have quite the fan support. But like you said, the way Allen is winning these games, that works very well in November and December right now as they're playing these deep games. And they just keep coming. It's the unsung heroes. We talk about Brady Bricker and, he got hurt and the running back situations and how it's just kind of a bunch of spare parts. But Zima, he's playing great football. The offensive line is playing great football. And Midland Legacy and Trinity kind of let me know that Midland Legacy is very much a Trinity kind of a team. They can't stop you, but they can score at will. I think Allen is going to have enough defensively to slow them down a couple of times. This is going to take a couple. And I don't look at Midland Legacy's defense and how that game came across as they're going to be able to stop Allen consistently, even though Allen doesn't have all of their stars. I think Allen will stop themselves 1 or 2 times just because they'll get a penalty. They'll make a boneheaded play or an inexperienced play because of all the spare parts that they've kind of put in there. But again, we talk about Coach Wigginton and we give him his flowers because this is an incredibly well-coached team and they're just finding their depth and they're finding their story within the team and the community that they have right there. I think it's not going to be easy. I think it's going to look very much like the Arlington Martin game where it may even have to go to overtime. It may even be a fourth quarter game. But I think this version of Allen is going to win a 1-score game by 7. It's going to probably look like the Prosper game. It's going to be like a 37-35, 37-34 kind of a game. But I think Allen will have the consistency and the technique to pull ahead in the fourth quarter. And the fact that they've done it and their district has got them ready for it, I think they're well suited to win this game and make it to the regional finals, where they will probably lose by 4 or 5 scores, but they'll make it there. Yeah,
the one thing I learned from that Legacy game is they didn't have the foot on the throat mentality because they were up 14-0, could have been 21-0. They came all the way to Pennington Field when was doing this. They brought their crowd, but they didn't put them away. They never put Trinity away, and they had trouble moving. Trinity had trouble moving the ball, and finally they switched up running backs to Josh Bell, and then they moved the ball, and it's like, okay. I mean, that's where it's swinging in Allen's favor. So if you're not going to put a team away when you have a chance to this time in the postseason, well, then that's going to be a problem for you.
Let me give you a little stat in here to kind of give you a little technical analysis. I know our fans, we gave them compliments, and they come to us for technical analysis, and we're going to give them a little bit of that technical analysis. We know Trinity's secondary is kind of their Achilles heel. We saw Marcus and some other in North Crowley put up some really big numbers against them. Marcos Davila, the legacy quarterback, he was 19 for 23 for 3 touchdowns, 209 yards. So what that meant to me was Legacy is making short, high probability passes that they're getting 8 to 10 yards because Trinity's DBs are playing so far off because they're so afraid of being beat deep. Allen's going to shut that down. And when that happens, that's going to force Damian Johnson. Is he going to be able to have that kind of 26 carries for 349 yards against Allen's defensive line, because their secondary can play that short game a lot better. They've seen it this year, and I think that's going to hurt Midland Legacy's ability to gash in the run game and have the short passing game go for 10 yards every single play, because Allen's going to be able to defend that a lot better than Trinity did.
That's some expert Thanksgiving analysis for my main man Diggsy over there. He knows what time it is. Let's go down the lower part. That's the Region 2 spot where it's the Duncanville bracket. It should be the Duncansville bracket. We had Caden Durham on this past week to get his bobblehead, and he's almost giddy for the point that he's actually getting some carries now because it's postseason. He didn't want to tell me what his yardage was for the year because he's kind of embarrassed by it. Before he even told me, he's like, look, I'm going a quarter and a half, 2 quarters. So I'm 1,100 this year because he had 1,800 or something like that last year. But he will get the way the Woodlands doesn't play defense, he may only get 3 quarters this week. I think whether this game's in Hutto or not and how much great offense they have offensive weapons with Quanell Farrakhan at receiver and obviously maybe Matoya at quarterback, but they're not stopping anybody when it comes to talented offenses, and that's where Duncanville is going to jump out there. Don't you agree? Yeah,
I think so. It seems a little kind of, we talk about the full circle, how every now and then you have the stories kind of retell themselves, like when we had Geyer and Heath playing each other, and all of a sudden we have, it seems like we have the coaches rematching each other. Now we got Duncanville returning to the scene of the crime where they already beat Hutto earlier this year, and now they're going to their home field to have to play a neutral site game. It just seems like the Hutto AD must be very forgiving. Like, I don't know if I'd want Duncanville over there after what they did to Hutto earlier in the offseason, but LaPlante over there, he's a good guy. He was giving us great updates on that Barbers Hill Richland game that we'll talk about when we get to 5A, which is game of the year kind of caliber right there. But yeah, I don't think Duncanville is going to have much of a problem. But I want you to give the Duncanville people a little bit of a clip. Give us a way that you see, what can the Woodlands do? What can the Woodlands generate from what you've seen on your role as the Houston side of things? What can the Woodlands do well that you might give you a little bit of hope?
What gives them hope is they're going to have to do something on special teams. They're going to have Farrakhan return 2, maybe 1 for a touchdown and 1 deep into the territory, and they're going to have to punch the ball out on defense. Otherwise, it's over, because I don't think they're going to stop them defensively at all. They can go a little bit toe to toe if Matoya goes deep, but if Matoya gets hit once or twice, he's proven. I mean, he took a hit against Willis and he was done for a week and a half. If he takes another hit like that, they're probably going to have to put him down and bring the backup in there. But their path for victory is on special teams, getting some big returns, and they're going to have to, when they're tackling, they got to be punching too. They got to tackle and punch and hope to get 2 turnovers that way. And even then, I think it's 1 to 2 score game if all that stuff happens. But I don't think it's going to happen. So Duncanville had. By the way, me and Caden and Durham and his mom spent a good majority of pre-show Google mapping Hutto, because I'm a Virginia boy. I had no clue where Hutto is, and obviously those two didn't know. So where are we going anyway? So we found out where it is. I guess they must have a nice stadium.
They do have a pretty nice stadium over there.
Do they really? I haven't seen it, so. Because they got 2 games out there this week. I believe Columbus is playing out there as well, or on Friday night. So
when we bring our brand to the Central Texas inside high school sports, like I keep talking about, because we're going to lose Lake Belton. We're losing our 3-5A Killeen schools. I know you're happy about that. So we have to get a new franchise out there and find a team. Got to find an auto dealership, and we got to find.
I'll tell you what. It's once that happens, I got to do a lot of backtracking. But I got like 11 podcast episodes I got to backtrack from where I said, I don't care about none of that stuff. Don't talk to me about East Texas, West Texas, or anything else.
We love Central Texas. We love Houston. But I agree,
Right.
and I think your analysis is correct that if the Woodlands keeps it close, it's probably because they got a couple of turnovers and a couple of special teams plays. Otherwise, going to look like a 49-14 kind of a game where we're having garbage time in the fourth quarter, where Duncanville has gotten really good at that. And that's one of the schools that you can't really look at the style points in the fourth quarter because they've got it down to a science where they're just kind of running it and punting it away and chewing up time. And so I never, DeSoto's we're going to talk about in Region 2. I think that Wiley East game is a little bit more telling than a Duncanville game of the same kind of score just because of the way Duncanville plays.
Right. By the way, I got to teach the credential people over at Choctaw Stadium how to spell Wiley. It's for Wiley East. I was on there looking for a credential and they put up credentials from last week. They had a WILEW as if they were playing Wiley Coyote or something like that. I was like, all right, we'll figure this out since it's a Texas team. Let's get this thing together. A North Texas squad playing. Rockwall bracket. Me and you were both at this one. I could only stay a half because I had to make it on the next train out to Euless. But Rockwall's taking on Spring Westfield. Again, we're Thanksgiving season, so we're being thankful to the running backs and we're being thankful to a sweet ground attack and thankful for the ice buckets because Rockwall had your boy Ashton Emery, who you correctly described as an angry runner. He can take the beatings and keep going. What did he get, 240, something like that last week?
271.
270, 4 touchdowns. On the other side, Spring Westfield has Taji Atkins, who single-handedly brought them back. And we're going to talk about this in the Barbers Hill deal, too. They were down 20 points to Klein Kane, and they didn't go get frantic and start throwing all over the place. They went to the running game. And Taji Atkins got 403 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's a small. He may even be smaller than Ashton. Smaller back, but he's got all those moves, the juke moves to make small gains into big gains. It's going to be a shootout down there at Pflugerville for sure.
One thing I'm concerned about, and I naturally default to the DFW area team when it comes to these kind of picks, just because I'm a DFW guy and I'm a homer. But I've seen Westfield enough to know that they got a little bit of tradition down there, and I started really digging into their games and their defense. Other than this Klein Kane game has been really good this year. Only get up 12, 13 points, and then Klein Kane kind of went wild. But
that was the first half. They shut them down the second half.
So they made the adjustments. They figured it out. And like you said, they came back in this. And watching Rockwall, their defense is good at times. Like they generated those turnovers with good, hits to the right, where you got the helmet and you hit the ball. They're well coached as far as that goes. But at the end of the day, they just don't have the size and speed to really keep up in a track meet. And that's kind of when you look at the game against Prosper, you look at the game against Jesuit, good offenses can wear them out. So that requires for them to have special teams play and to have defensive turnovers to compensate for those things. Because offensively, because they have this crazy 2-quarterback system, it just takes a quarterback having 1 or 2 bad plays and they're punting it. It's like, when they are in rhythm, they are great. But when they kind of get a little bit off rhythm, it looks a little disjointed at times. And, they only had 3 or 4 stops in that game offensively where they were stopped. But those are the 3 or 4 that kept Waxahachie in the game and kept it a close game, despite the fact that they got a couple of turnovers in that game. All that is what I'm trying to get to the point of the fact that I just feel like Spring Westfield is going to win this game. I look at the fact that they make those adjustments and they've got a little bit more defensive consistency. You can look at that one game against Klein Kane, but like you said, they came back in the second half. There was no second half adjustment. It was like 22-21 in the first half with Waxahachie, and Rockwall ended up 46-43. So they didn't do anything in the second half to slow them down. They just made the right plays. Out of 20 important plays in this game against Waxahachie, they had like 11 of the 20. And that's ultimately what got them the win here. So in this game, I feel like they're going to need 13 to 15 of those 20 pivotal plays to beat Spring Westfield, because I think they're going to be an underdog going into this game. I don't think they're going to be enough. I don't think they're going to have enough in them to make that many plays. So I think Westfield's going to end up winning. It's going to be a close back and forth game, but I think they're going to win this game by a score. hate saying that. Like, I feel I'm feeling clammy right now. Like, I just picked the Houston area team to win, but I just don't. I call it the Rockwall bracket, not the Westfield bracket. But really digging into Westfield, I can't see them with what I saw against Waxahachie, and Waxahachie caused a lot of those problems. I can't see them being that much more better to beat a good team like Westfield.
Do you have thoughts on seeing Marshall first series, Hoover second series?
I like it.
Excuse me, Marshall Lock. You didn't like that?
And I never did. I've been complaining about that. I've been complaining about all the times. And ironically, what's Lancaster, how they've kind of gotten to the next stage, they quit doing that. Now all of a sudden they're in the third round, and not to say that Rockwall hasn't made it. We're talking about them, but I think that's a limiting factor for them. I don't like the 2 quarterback system. I think it makes, you get cold out there. You got to be in the game, and they've worked it better than just about anybody has. But I think you're going to see it in this game as a factor, as part of why they don't lose, because they're going to have to be perfect. And now you have to have 2 quarterbacks playing perfect as opposed to 1 quarterback playing perfect to win this kind of a game. And I think it doesn't matter. It's all academic for next week. Duncanville is going to take care of business against either team. But for this side of things, I think that Westfield is just got a little bit more defensive pop in their game, and I like them.
Right. And what worries me about the 2 quarterback thing is, suppose one of them throws a pick, and then you're out for the next series. And even though this is how it works, in and out, you can't help but deep down think, well, this is because I threw that pick, and now I'm going to sit on that pick for a couple 3 series until I get back out there, and I got to prove to them I can do it. Otherwise, I'm going to get I'll get 1 throw and it's over again. But if you go to the other side of 6A, you look in the Region 3. Interesting news out of North Shore. We're not quite sure what's wrong with Caleb Bailey, but he came out of that game in the second half, and they were struggling with Clare Springs. He came out of that game. They brought in Caleb Maryland, and you can't get a straight answer out of anybody down there as far as what the problem is. They first wanted to say it was cramps. Somebody threw out a rumor it's the other knee that he hurt the year before, where he missed the whole year. We don't know what's going on there, so it'll probably be a game-time decision. By the way, they got a sweet triple header down there at NRG. If our podcast listeners are in Houston right now, that's where you should go. I feel bad for the 10:30 a.m. game when you're just finished eating God knows what, and you got to get up at 6 or 7 to get out there. But that one, and then Atascocita takes on Lamar. By the way, the North Shore against Cy-Fair, I neglected to talk about Cy-Fair with the University of Texas commit at quarterback Trey Owens, who is just making the plays he has to, and they took out Katy in overtime, and they were behind 21-14. They had to score at the end of the game to get into overtime. And then the next highlight I saw was, 4th and 15, so they shut them down the first 3 times, and Katy threw an incompletion at the end of the game. So they really stepped up defensive-wise. So it's going to be a problem if Caleb Bailey's not out there. Now, I still would pick North Shore just because they are North Shore. But if they win that game, they play the winner of Atascocita and Lamar. I was huge on Lamar. They're undefeated until last week, where I saw they needed the help of 5 turnovers in order to eke out a win against Ridgepoint. They won 31-28, but they got some of the fastest athletes on that team, on the Lamar team. And I was all ready 2 weeks ago to pick them over Atascocita, just because Atascocita was kind of stumbling through the end of their season with 2 losses, and they were really hammering Pearland, but let them come back into that game before they took off, beat them by 26, I believe. But I might go Atascocita in that game, but that one probably is going to be the game of that triple header for people to see, and it's at 6 o'clock. So those 2 will play, and we may get another Atascocita North Shore, but holding out hope for Lamar to get in there. And it might be a nice little crowd out there to see Lamar and North Shore if that ends up happening.
A lot of people like to compare when we talk about Houston versus DFW area. We got District 11, which is the Duncanville district, and the District 21, which is the North Shore district. And all 4 of those teams in District 21 are still playing football, even though Waxahachie dropped off, and Cedar Hill has kind of been impressive. But I still think that kind of gives you a slight advantage to 21. I think it came down to, didn't we have rematches last year or something?
Yep. They went 3. I mean, they've gone 3 rounds deep the last 3 years. It's what they do now. Granted, a couple of there's districts that they have to go up against. The team they go up against the first round, 21 versus 22. 22 6A wasn't going to beat any other district anyway, except for the Houston ISD district. So that's an easier one. But the next second round ones are good games, and they end up keep on going. So, all right, let's move to Division 2, shall we?
Let's do it, Wizzy.
let's do what we call the South Lake Carroll bracket. They thought they were going to play at 2:30 Friday. They bumped that back to 3:30 Friday. Is it really a difference? Well, that sun goes down at about 4 o'clock. And I know shooting the Trinity Midland Legacy, they're looking directly into the sun as if Jerry Jones forgot to put the curtains down for a good couple times there. So will that be a factor? Who knows? I can't see Highland Park hanging with them, but they are Highland Park. So you tell me what you
They
think.
are Highland Park, and I'm sure they're a little bit mad at Gunner and Comanche for getting that 12 o'clock spot over at Choctaw and making it a more of a sunset sort of a game. Carroll and Highland Park have played a couple of times over the years, and Carroll has not had much of a problem against Highland Park when they play with them. And you look at how Highland Park had to come back in that game. It's a complete Randy Allen masterpiece on how he came back against McKinney, and you kind of expect that. We kind of talked about that being our limiting factor against McKinney, is that we felt like, they had that problem, and they had to show us that could they overcome that scrappy Highland Park offense that was just going to stay in it and not give up and not get down on themselves, and they couldn't. They lost with a walk-off field goal. And I think you had to know when Highland Park was starting that drive with 4 or 5 minutes left in the game that they were going to go down and find a way to kick a field goal. It's just inevitable at that point. But now you got Carroll, who does very much the same style of football that Highland Park does, and they're going to have the same intangibles and the same pride and the same mechanics and the same good coaching, except they got a lot more talent than Highland Park does. I don't see this game being close. I think South Lake Carroll at least 3 scores, if not higher, and I think they're going to just go on a high note to the regional finals. They're mad at that Byron Nelson game. Like that's been motivating them. We talked about how in that game, how would South Lake Carroll respond? Well, we've seen how they respond. They've been nothing but dominant since then, and Byron Nelson's had a couple of hiccups since then. So I think Carroll may be getting their really good wide receiver back this week or next week, and that's going to completely be a game changer. And South Lake Carroll is playing at a high level. We got the blonde hair, and we got Carroll action. We got the state of Texas and the drums and the trash cans being beat. It is Carroll time, and Carroll is playing great football. I think they're going to take care of business against Highland Park. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a dogfight, but I think it's just going to be a touchdown here, a touchdown there, 14 at halftime, 21 in the third quarter, and then by the fourth quarter, it's going to be 42-14, and it's going to be one of those games you look at. And that was a hard-fought 42-14 game. It wasn't easy, but I give Carroll the edge.
Yeah, and before they even get to the dugout at Choctaw at the end of that game, I guarantee you Riley's going to have them starting to get riled up about Byron Nelson because they won't know about him because that's who the next game is, and that's not until Saturday. There's no game in front of them, right? And why are they playing that?
That's the only game on Saturday at Choctaw.
They're going to get some sunlight issues because they're playing at peak 3:30 time. Nelson against Capel. Capel has probably one of the more underrated receivers. Baron Tipton, I mean, people know about him, but he's only going to UNT. It's not like he's going to these high Division I teams that people are talking about, but all that guys make plays. He had 3 catches last week, all of them for touchdowns, all of them in the first half, got them way out front, and they went ahead and held on to beat Jesuit. And then on the other side, you got Byron Nelson. Not a lot of people are talking about Von Grote, but he's up there almost 3,000 yards passing, and we talk about Byron Nelson's defense because they're playing so great, but Capel's defense is playing good as well. So where do you find this game? Where do you find this matchup?
I'm a little proud of myself for it. I like to pat myself on the back, as you know. And I'm just thinking, we're 30 minutes into this podcast. I've not mentioned Plano East yet. So now that we're in Capel's district, we can at least just say the words Plano East. I don't have much to say yet. I'm sure I'll find a parallel somewhere. We did win the basketball, the Dallas Mavericks basketball classic this past week in tournament play. That's a whole different issue. It almost makes me want to do a podcast because I've always wondered, like, what strategies are involved in tournament play? Because you got football out here where we play once a week, and that's it. And there are no special kind of things. Every now and then you'll get a Saturday, Thursday kind of a thing where you'll play. And in the pros, you'll get a Thursday game like you're going to have to suffer through the highlights and crying afterward when you're watching your Commanders lose. to the Cowboys. But football is very strict. One game, one game, one game. But basketball, you get 5 games in 3 days. I wonder how that changes strategy. And because once you get district and whatnot, you've got, 2 games a week, sometimes 3 if they're playing. And then the state championship, you've got 2 games kind of back-to-back Friday, Saturday. So I wonder if there's any extra strategy to that. But that's a different story for a different day, because we're talking I was about to say we're talking Jesuit, but we're going to talk about what I learned from the Jesuit Coppell game as it applies to the Byron Nelson game. And if you remember on the podcast, I was patting myself on the back before I got into my Plano East rant. See, when I talk about Plano East, it just throws everything off. It just brings me to a different sphere. It is. I gave you perfect cut points. That Jesuit would do something in the game to push Coppell and force them to make an adjustment and force them to get better, but they're still going to win. They're still going to overcome that. And I thought Jesuit would find something. And for me, what Jesuit found was the intermediate routes, like the 10 to 12-yard routes behind the linebackers in front of the DBs. And they had really good success at those kind of short passes. And I don't know if that really works into Byron Nelson's philosophy and how they play the game, but I found it was interesting that Jesuit was able to, find a little hole in the Coppell defense, exploit it for a couple of periods, and then they kind of ended up losing by 3 scores. This is such a 50-50 game for me. I keep going back and forth. I have a Byron Nelson narrative. I have a Coppell narrative. My Coppell narrative is they have played at a very high level after about week 4 consistently. If you ignore the first 3 games, the game against Saxe, Timber Creek, those 2 games are kind of head-scratching games where you're like, what about that? But once district started, they started to play at a high level, and they haven't stopped playing at a high level for 10 weeks. So we have 10 weeks of consistently high football. Whereas Byron Nelson, their ceiling against Carroll, they got fired up for that game, and they played their best game, but then they had that letdown game against Northwest Eaton right afterwards where they had to struggle to win that game. And even against Midland, it just wasn't as crisp as you were expecting to see out of Byron Nelson. So Byron Nelson at their peak, I think, is a better team than Coppell. But Coppell has showed me that they can consistently play at their max ability level. So I think that's going to give them a whole bunch of confidence going into this game. But at the end of the day, I think Byron Nelson just has too much talent to. I think it's going to be a back and forth, never more than a 1-score game. But I think Byron Nelson's going to win like a 28-21 game that they're going to have a drive in the 4th quarter to win. Coppell's keys for winning in this game, they have to be perfect. They can't have any turnovers, and they've done a very good job limiting turnovers. But what does Byron Nelson do great? Forcing turnovers. This is going to be the best defense that they've seen this year. So they have to be safe in their play calling and not let those DBs come up and missile out a ball. And Byron Tipton, I saw that highlight against Geyer where he stole an interception. You can't have any of those kind of throws in this game because Byron Nelson will not make that mistake that Geyer did. So both teams have to play perfect. Byron Nelson has no room for error. Coppell has no room for error. Who's going to make the mistakes? I think because Byron Nelson has a little bit more talent, that it's going to be a little bit easier for them in the 4th quarter, but Coppell is going to give them 48 minutes of hell. It's going to be a fun game. If it was anywhere other than Choctaw, I would go see that game.
Yeah, I have a feeling that when you go to the box score, you'll hide the score. You'll go right to turnovers. Yep. And if that doesn't tell you the answer, you'll go right to penalties. And then by then you should figure out who won that game, right?
It's generic, but it's so true in this area. Like we're going to talk about when we get down to 5A, when it comes to turnovers and crazy things like that, that these are the factors. And I genuinely hope, and it doesn't happen all the time, I hope I look at that and we see 0-0 on turnovers. And we just had who is the best team, who executed the best, because these are 2 great teams that are playing at a high level. And, it's like we got on the other side of the bracket, we got the Blue Bloods. We got Carroll and Highland Park. These are the new Blue Bloods. Coppell and Byron Nelson are the new group of teams. These are the games that are fun to watch, and I wish they were on different sides of the bracket and we could have this as the regional finals. It is what it is, and it's going to be a really good game. If I could suggest to anybody to see one game this week, it's this one. Go see Coppell and Byron Nelson.
If you're in town. Otherwise, I would suggest you take your butt down to the Alamo Dome for the game I've been trying to get to, but I can't because it's way too far away, and I got responsibilities up here. That DeSoto Willis game in the lower part of that bracket, I'm looking forward to probably since week 7. That one, if turnovers will have to play a factor because that's going to be a straight out shootout. passing galore. We talked about running backs, but I have a feeling this one's going to be a lot of passing until maybe they get, if DeSoto gets up a score or two, they'll start giving Tiger the ball a little bit more. But man, I'm looking forward to that one. Willis wins the toss. They get the only thing they really wanted out of that game was an indoor game, and they got it, and they get to make DeSoto travel. So it's going to be an interesting game. So you look at DeSoto's defense, and Keelan Abrams has 18 sacks on the year, but is he going to be able to get to DJ Lagway? Because that kid is so elusive that he can get away. He'll take off running. The quarterbacks that Abrams is sacking are kind of staying in the pocket there and just getting drilled when they come around the corner. It's going to be an interesting game, and a couple DJs going at it. Mixing it up.
Got our mixtape going on. I feel like we could just copy and paste it from 2 weeks ago because we gave the analysis of this game 2 weeks ago. I think more of the newer things is one thing you've been giving your flowers to our DJ Bailey, about this year is the lack of turnovers. And Wiley East was able to generate turnovers against him. And that's kind of the first time we've seen that. In that game, all of a sudden, when DeSoto is not playing a clean game, we go from these 49-7, 49-14 games to a game where it's in doubt in the third and fourth quarter. So now, as the competition is getting better, we know they got up for Duncanville, and that's kind of that was their Super Bowl. Now that you have these games where you don't necessarily have that built-in rivalry, Wiley East, they're not going to get up for the Dub East name, and now with Willis, I know they're probably pushing the narrative DJ versus DJ. It's the Houston DeSoto or whatever they're going to be trying to tell themselves in this game. But at the end of the game and at the end of the day, to me, it's still about turnovers, because DeSoto showed me if they make those 2 to 3 turnovers in a game, which they have not done all year, they look very mortal. They look very beatable against a team they should not be playing with at this point. They do that against Willis. Willis has a route to win that game. But I think DeSoto will clean things up and win things by 2 scores. But I don't think it's going to be the big blowout that a lot of people in DeSoto think it is.
I think it's going to be the next big game for them. Like Duncanville was their big game, and this is the next one. I think they've looked at this. I think they've seen what these paths could lead up to, and they know. I mean, people know that people are talking about Lagway. They're talking about how he's the greatest quarterback out there, and Mathis is in his DJ's face saying he's the best, man. Why don't you? This is your time to show him what time it is. Show him what DeSoto Eagle, what the U is all about. Let's go. Let's get this one. And then they might not have another big game until state, because if they get Cedar Hill, they'll be thinking, well, we already beat them, so we know we can beat them again. That's the 4th place team in our district, and then they move on to the next game. It's until they get to state. So, I guess that'll be the next one if they play South Lake Carroll or Byron Nelson. That'll be their next big game. Or
Highland Park. Don't be disrespectful to Randy Allen. What's wrong with you? After what Touchdown Teddy told you about how excited he was about this season, you're just completely writing him off. What's wrong with you, Ward? That is disrespect at the highest level.
Pat Doney told me that. Ted Madden would never give me information like that. That was a Pat Doney piece of information that went in this.
Pat Doney, why are you being disrespectful to TV Pat?
I'm disrespectful for everything, but I'm not going to be disrespectful to Cedar Hill no more. They got the team I need to get knocked out of there, Tomball. I don't even know how I'm supposed to analyze that Tomball team, because there's nothing to analyze. It's a 6-4 team that got in the playoffs. They're playing teams that they shouldn't have won the first one. They got it easily. Then they go on to this next game and they go for 2, because I think if you didn't see that game, they went into overtime and Oak Ridge scored first and kicked the extra point. They scored second and went for 2, because I don't think they thought they could last any more overtimes on this deal. So they went out and got it. They won that game. So now they're playing Cedar Hill and Waco. We'll have our correspondent down there. You know who we're talking about. Sweet Olivia will be down there giving us some video and tweets and all that stuff. So we'll take a look at that stuff. But I think Cedar Hill wins this game, and I think they win it running away. And I know I'm going to kill myself for doing this, because I keep doing it all the time with Tomball. But I decided not to do it with Prosper this year. I'm riding with Prosper, although I do say they're going to lose, but I say they're going to lose by just a little bit. Tomball, and I just think they're going to get beat back because Cedar Hill.
It's crazy. I just want to kind of give a statistic that kind of highlights what you said. Just looking at the records, we got the South Lake. We got 11-1 versus 11-1. We got 12-0 versus 12-0. Now in Region 2, we got 11-0 DeSoto because they only played 11 games against Willis, 12-0. And now we got Cedar Hill 7-5 against Tomball 8-4. Like we got more loss. One of those teams has more losses than everybody else in all the games we cover, and we got two of them that are like this, including your arch nemesis Tomball, just screwing up everything. I think Cedar Hill's going to win this game by 3 scores, though, because again, the way they're playing travels well, and I just don't believe in the 6-4 Houston team. Now 8-4.
Exactly, and they're rolling. It's not like with Cedar Hill they were winning going into the playoffs. No. Tomball wasn't. They lost their last game, and then they get in there and play a couple of teams that they probably should beat, and they did beat. You look at the other side of the bracket, if we're talking Region 3 real quick, Hightower and King, I told you they got the 10:30 game. Hightower is one of those teams that's got they remind me a little bit of McKinney, to be honest with you. They got D1 talent at specific positions. Quarterback, they have a D1 talent there too, but other positions they have no college prospects, and that's why they're 11-1, and I think they should beat C King, but it's not a team that I would pick over Summer Creek, who is just going to blast Stratford. Apologies to Andrew Luck, but they're just going to blast Stratford in that game.
Captain
and they're going to probably
Andrew
beat
Luck. Salute you.
Captain Luck. They're going to beat Hightower, and they're going to beat whoever they play from the San Antonio thing, and it's going to be a nice Summer Creek in the state title game against who? You tell me. Is it going to be DeSoto, South Lake, or
Highland Park?
You
never know. We'll find out in that. But I'm worried about Summer Creek. It's like if we get North Shore, Duncanville 8 or whatever we're on like that, you kind of know what you're getting. I don't think we truly know how good Summer Creek is, and I don't think we're going to respect them enough just on their name. Like Summer Creek, what is that? Sounds like a product you use, on the late night infomercial, a Summer Creek or something. I don't know. But they are playing at a very high level. And when you look at the computer polls, they're rated as highly as those other teams. So, I'm probably going to have to break down that North Shore game and those 21 6A games to kind of find out what they did well, what they could do better at to try to come up with some sort of analysis on that. But for me, Summer Creek is highly worrisome for whoever DFW team comes out because I don't think Summer Creek has much of a problem to get to where they needed to get the state finals. We got 4 teams that all have really good pedigrees that could all get there, and they're going to have to work to get there. I think Summer Creek is pretty much just go ahead and write them in the bracket.
Yeah, exactly. Lloyd Avant, remember that name. 5,000 career yards rushing so far, so he's solid running back going to Tulsa from Summer Creek. All right, let's move down to 5A.
We went 7 and 8 in our bracket names, so that's good.
So, yes, we did. Yes, we did. I didn't even mention half of them. That's because we knew what we were talking about. The Denton Ryan bracket, we didn't know what we were talking about because they're out. I'm sorry. They lost to Abilene pretty bad. They're taking on Justin Northwest. That's another running back that's playing great. Effie's down there. What do you got? 245 last week with 3 touchdowns. They're taking on Abilene. Tell me what you think about this one because Abilene looked pretty tough.
Abilene did, but when you break down that box score, they got 4 turnovers, and you can't have 4 turnovers this late in the playoffs and expect a win. But still, we have the calibration. That I think Denton Ryan wins that game if it was a clean game, but they were not clean, and they did not earn the right to play in that. And Denton Ryan, that's been the problem. They just have a game where they just can't hold on to the ball. You get tipped passes or whatnot. I think now you've got Justin Northwest in there, who they play very consistently good football, but they don't have a very high ceiling. We've seen Abilene; they have a very high ceiling, and they've got a lot of good talent, and they have a kind of a defense that can generate turnovers. Other than Northwest running back, I don't see really that one player they can look at and go, okay, we can rely on them. Abilene's got a few players that they can put the rocket ship on their back and say, okay, we need you to take us to that next level. I think Abilene's going to win this game by a score. I think it's going to be closer than the Denton Ryan game because I don't think Justin Northwest is going to make 4 turnovers. But that being said, I think Abilene's just a better team.
And how about Northwest making you look good last week? I believe, what was the word you used for Tascosa? Some of their fans
Idiots.
were idiots.
Yes.
I believe you used idiots, and they got shut out last. And that was never a game from start to finish. So
it was Tascosa's season, but goodbye, Tascosa. It was nice to have you.
Go ahead and pat yourself on the back again, Diggsy. You've done it again.
Out of here, Tascosa.
All right, the Aledo bracket is they're taking Red Oak on at 7:30 at Choctaw.
Put a big smile on your face, Ward, because this is getting clipped. You know this is about to get clipped. Whatever we say is about to get clipped. I'm just warning you.
Okay.
You give your introduction, and then you get a big smile on your face. So when it's time to be played in the Aledo locker room, you're ready to go.
Let me go ahead and mark this. Marked. But before let's talk about Red Oak first before you get into your raids there, because they're thankful for Chris Martinez. That's what they're thankful for this season, because they didn't know what they had at quarterback going into the playoffs. And I haven't seen any video highlights of it. I'm assuming he's throwing quick screens and letting his fast receivers go for touchdowns, but he threw for 4 scores and he's getting the wins when they need it. So talk about Red Oak going into this game, and then tell me what's broken.
Well, Red Oak should be very proud of themselves, because to overcome a quarterback injury this late in the, especially a quarterback as good. I mean, you were singing his praise in the Lake Belton game. Moody, I think is his name. You were singing his praise, what he was able to do, all the throws he was able to make. Sing his praises some more. Like what did you see when you saw Red Oak that was like?
Reggie Moody, super elusive, got away from all sorts of pressure and still made the passes that he needed to make. And Red Oak's got their career best win total of 12 this year, so they can hang their hat on that.
Taz Williams and some really good, talented players. And, you just can't – I've heard some Red Oak fans trying to spin how, this team might be better with Martinez because you're putting one of the best – you're putting one of the best players on your team. He's going to have the ball, and he gets to make a decision. If he's going to run the ball, he's very dangerous. He can throw the ball. If he's throwing the ball, he's got really good pair of receivers out there who can do something with that. I still like the fact that you can spread it out, and you kind of know what's happening with Red Oak. And I think the fact that Red Oak is looking at this Amarillo win that was a one-score game back and forth, 28-28 in the fourth quarter, and they were 6-5, very much like we're talking about with Tom Ball. And it took them to the fourth quarter to win that game with a minute left in the game. I think Martinez walked it off. That's a big concern for me. And that's Amarillo. Now we got Aledo. We got the reigning and defending 5A Division I champions who has 11 rings on their – hey, I don't even know where they're putting the last ring, Ward. I don't even – we've got nose rings now out here. Got earrings. We got – they got so many titles. Like, they got long hair out there. They're probably getting their hair in a ponytail, putting like a little ring back there to hold their hair back for as many rings as Aledo's got. But I made a comment on Twitter on the dump Friday nights at midnight or Saturday mornings, as some people, Ward's a morning person, so he's probably reading it Saturday morning. I'm doing it Friday night, my Friday night. And I said Aledo is broken. And I didn't get a lot of, flack about it on Twitter, but I got screenshots, and it's being talked about in Aledo social media circles. They don't like it. They don't like the reference that Aledo is broken because they haven't, because they're only beating teams by 3 and 4 touchdowns and this, that, and the other. And like, oh, we're fine, On the very first playoff game they had, the coach came on the radio show at halftime, and he's like, if we keep playing like this, we're going to get beat. Like he is unhappy with the performances that they're putting up there. If Duncanville had won the games against Hutto and against whoever they played last week, Rockwall Heath, if they had those scores, we'd be worried about Duncanville right now, because Duncanville is playing at a high level and we expect really good things out of Duncanville. And if they were winning games by 14-15 or 21-22, we'd be worried about them too, because it's about to get harder. Red Oak is not really the team that I'm worried about. I'm worried about Longview for them. Longview is playing at a very high level right now, and you are seeing mistakes in Aledo football that are normally not there. And we talk about first-year coaches. We talk about philosophy. You can, we talk about Randy Allen, and we know we can trust Randy Allen. And Randy Allen we can trust. We know they're going to find something. Coach Buchanan, Coach Wood, we know that you can trust that. They got a new coach over there, and it doesn't matter that he's part of that. It doesn't matter that Coach Buchanan, they have an open text message thread, and they have a group chat, and they can reach out to him and get advice and talk to them, it's still a different voice and a different expectation and a different philosophy and just a different vibe in there. And I'm very worried. But what I think Aledo fans have a problem with, Ward, and you and I, we're common folk. We understand this. If our car breaks, we go to the mechanic and we get it fixed. Our car is broken, we go get it fixed. Aledo, mentally, they're just like, if something is broken, that must mean we need something new. It just means you got to fix some things. Aledo has some things that they need to fix. They have some turnovers. They have some personnel issues they need to fix. They have some consistency issues they need to fix. They fix it. They're still clearly the best team in 5A Division I. If they don't fix it, Longview's going to pop them. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Aledo is broken, because they need to look inside themselves and fix some of these errors, fix some of these scheme issues, fix some of these turnover issues, and some of it's injuries, and you can't really fix injuries at the end of the day. You can get in that ice bath you were talked about. But Aledo is making uncharacteristic, consistent mistakes, even though they are still really, really good and still really, making big plays, big numbers, winning by 3 or 4 scores. They should not have played Lubbock Cooper as close as they did. They should not have played Killeen Shoemaker as close as they did. They're going to beat Red Oak, and who knows how close that's going to be. They'll probably beat Abilene next week, but after that, they got to play really, really good football.
Yeah, because like you said, Longview is red hot. After that McKinney loss, they were just blowing up, and Aledo fans, he said it can be fixable. He's not casting them off. There's things that need to be fixed, and they can be fixed, and they can put another ring in your belly button or wherever you're putting rings these days. It can happen. So don't get too riled up.
You get riled up. I mean, they're going to get riled up anyway, Ward. You can't speak calmness to Aledo. They live on feeling like they're disrespected. And I can only say what I can say as far as they are clearly the best team in 5A Division I. Like, by far, their talent roster is the best. Better than Longview. But you got to play at a level, at a high percentage of your potential ceiling in December. And if they're not playing at that high level of their potential ceiling, they're going to lose.
You know a team that should have lost last week? Probably the Richland Royals, because they were down 34-9 at the half. Wasn't looking good. Coach Cates said, listen, I know we probably should start chucking it all over the place to get this thing back in order, but we're not going to do that. We're going to hand it to Michael Turner 45 times. He's going to run for 309 yards. We're going to come back and win this thing in overtime, thanks to our junior running back. What can you say? What did you take out of this game that maybe Richland can use against a Forney team that had to gut out a win themselves against Lone Star?
Talk about momentum and going in completely different directions here as we are making it to the Forney bracket of our 5A Division I chat. Richland can definitely take a lot of momentum, as you said, out of that game. That's a game that you should not win. When you're down 34-9 at halftime, that should not be a game you win. And Barbers Hill, I know they're your Houston darlings over there. They made a lot of stupid coaching decisions, and I think decisions that they're going to regret. And I'm going to give you the situation, Ward, and you tell me what the Houston debate is. We got overtime. We made it overtime. Richland came back. They had this big comeback. Now you got Barbers Hill, and they score a touchdown. So now we got it 47-41, and now you kick the extra point and you let Richland go. Well, we had an offsides play. So now you move the ball half the distance, got 1 yard. Richland has not played yet. And now you decide, because in your brain and your philosophy, we're 1 yard away instead of 2 yards away. Let's go for 2 right now. They go for 2. It gets stuffed. Richland goes down and scores and kicks an extra point, and they win. I don't think that's excusable, Ward.
You can't do it. No. Not when you had the ball first. That's ridiculous. I mean, we talked about it with the Tomball game where they went for 2, but they had the ball second. That's inexcusable. Maybe if there was 2 more penalties and the thing's just on the doorstep.
Not even then. You
don't think so? Not if you have a push type play?
even
that they've
we've
used
we've seen
before.
the
They
tush
can
push
go
go
from
wrong in high
the
school quite a bit. I think you kick the extra point and force them to make the decision, force them to make the call. You lost the coin flip, and that's where you are. But at that point, there's nothing good that can come out of it, because at that point, now anything beats you. Now you got to keep them from scoring a touchdown and doing anything at that point. I think that's inexcusable from Barbers Hill in the justification. Well, we got a yard. That yard was cost you the game effectively. I didn't like the call. I don't like the philosophy behind the call. And as we get talking about, there's been some interesting calls this week where I disagree with a lot of really well-minded coaches who are telling me why I'm wrong, and I'll come on here and tell you why I think they're wrong as far as what the analytics say and what the momentum says about the situation when we talk about Melissa and South Oak Cliff. But in that situation, I don't think there's any reason why you go for two. But that being kind of elevated to the points you were making about that, I think Richland is on a high. They won a game they shouldn't have won, and then they got a couple of breaks. They had that coaching decision, which helped push them to win that game, and they got the win, and they're on a high. But Forney played an absolutely bad, embarrassing football game, and they still won it. And that speaks to the talent that Forney has. 5 turnovers, a coaching decision at the end of the game, which could have cost them the opportunity to win the game. They overcame all of that and still beat a gritty and very good Frisco Lone Star team by 2 points. And I think Forney is just way better than Richland at the end of the day. Forney's defense is one of the best defenses I've seen across all classifications this year. As long as they don't have 5 turnovers against Richland, they're going to win this game by 2 or 3 scores. They have 5 turnovers again, all bets are off, like it was against Lone Star. But the play I'm talking about, if you're unfamiliar with the Richland or the Forney and Lone Star game. Forney just needed a first down to win the game, and Lone Star effectively let them score. I watched the clip a couple of times. I got the clip sent to me. It's arguable if he let them score. Maybe it was just a really good run by Javian Osborne. But you saw no effort to tackle. You saw effort to get push. You saw effort to actually, drive and run after them. But I think a well-coached team can coach you to give it effort so they don't immediately have the idea, because if everybody's standing around, then you have to think in your head, oh, they're trying to let me score. Maybe I should get down. So if you give full maximum effort, maybe you don't have that thought that they're trying to let us score and you finish it off. But that gave Lone Star a chance to have the opportunity with the 2-point conversion to tie the game, which they did go down there and do. They got the touchdown, but they missed the 2-point conversion. So to me, that was a little bit of a coaching error, because you tell the kid to get down. You're running with them at that point. Get down, get down, get down. I think you could have done that. But I think, and they called a timeout right before the play. So that kind of gives you a little bit more of a, what are they doing over there? What are they telling? And they did. I talked to Coach Fleener about it after the game, and they did, talk about if they hold you to try to get down, they're trying to, punch it out. Don't let, we're an advantage here. But they did not talk about if you're going to score, what you should do. So all things being considered, that was a little bit of a coaching mistake. I'm more concerned about the 5 turnovers. You can't have 5 turnovers in the playoffs, and or none.
A lot of those come from a couple of them came from special teams issues, which I think will clear that up, because that guy has been returning punts the whole season. He dropped a couple of them, but Crawford's throwing off his back foot a lot in that game. I mean, it's week 13 or 14, so I don't know if we're going to change that. But man, back foot throws really make me nervous when I see that, because that's just, you're not putting anything into it. You're just kind of lofting it in there, and that. I saw way too many of those in that game when I was there, and it makes me nervous. Richland ended up winning a coin flip, so they do get this game at home. But I do see Forney. I mean, again, I'm a big Aaron Flowers fan, and he made a pick, and he made some big hits in that game. So maybe he'll be the one that can slow down Turner, who will, he'll be blessed by the ice bath he got last week with the 45 carries.
This game reminds me of Melissa versus Lovejoy, because Richland is the Melissa in this case. And when they play good or great teams, they look great offensively. But now they got to play a defense. And we saw what happened for 2 straight weeks now when Melissa had to, well, not straight weeks, but 2 out of the last 3 weeks when Melissa had to play a defense. They got shut down immediately. And I think that's what Forney is going to be able to do against Richland. I think they're going to be able to score and do their thing offensively, but I think they're going to shut Richland's offense down, and that's going to create a 3-score kind of a game, assuming, again, 5 turnovers is not an issue.
Well, the winner plays the winner of Longview and Lancaster, who actually get to play at Forney this week.
What a blessing that is.
Bank, First Bank. Longview's like, dadgummit, I'm not playing in Mesquite Memorial or Kincaid. All right, well, this is close enough. Man, Longview's on a hot streak, dude. Their defense is incredible. Tatum may have been out, but they went to Washington, and Tut was throwing the long ball, and they just manhandled Reedy. They kind of – I was looking over some statistics, and Lancaster's the only team that scored more than 2 touchdowns against them the whole year, except for McKinney at the beginning. I mean, they 11 of their wins, I think 7 of them, they let up 7 points or less. The defense is just outstanding, but Lancaster found out something about that. Can they tap into that again? Again, they're going to have to stop them. They gave up 55 or something when they played the first time, but can they tap into that?
I think they can tap into it, and I think they can keep this game somewhat competitive if you view the 20-point loss that they had against Longview the first time as competitive. One thing I really want to highlight about that Reedy game was I was wrong about Reedy this year. That's one of my swings and misses. I had Reedy not making the playoffs. They made the playoffs. They had a really good team. They were able to get some skill players that I didn't know that they were going to be able to have, and they looked good at times. And what Longview did to them is they manhandled them, at the lines, which was their strength going into it. I thought Reedy would have good offensive and defensive lines. I was wondering about their skill kids. Longview shut them down. Longview completely dominated them. Reedy scored first in that game, and then they struggled to score after that, and Longview just beat them up. And they beat up a very good physical Reedy team, which had the thought that they could beat Longview. They thought they had the formula to beat Longview, and they weren't even close to beating Longview. And now we got Lancaster, who is a bit of a resurgent Lancaster. They've gone through the trials and tribulations. And I want to give a shout out to my guy, Coach Penrod, who is there was a great article about him in the morning news, which I didn't even know about. And I had to text him some angry thoughts because I'm learning about him having cancer in the morning news and not in this text thread that we have going on. And I get that he's a private person, and now that it's out there, he wanted to tell the story, but he didn't want to make it about him. And we won't make it about him other than the fact that the Inside High School Sports family is thinking about you and praying for you. And it sounds like you're almost on the other end. And maybe you can bring a camera out to this ward and do some coverage. But I told Penrod that once he kicks this, as part of the article, it was mentioned that he's climbed 4 mountains in 4 different continents. I told him that I'll go hiking with him. Give me a nice, easy hike. I can do it, and he's going to hold me to it. So maybe you can bring your camera out there, and maybe we'll do a story on it. Who knows? Like the digs and for social media. I know you're not going to waste your time putting me on the big show, but maybe a social media only story. We'll put the Penrod Digs hike on there. Good story. And speaking of that, well, make sure you tell us about your Thanksgiving story before we close out our episode, because I'm going to forget about it. It's like, I got to tell you right now, Squirrel, Thanksgiving episode, good stories. Talk about it, Ward. You write that down, Ward. Talk about end of show, Thanksgiving show for that. All that to say, I think Longview is going to beat Lancaster probably by 3 scores again. Lancaster's gotten better from the last time they played, but so has Longview. And I just don't think that Lancaster has enough defensively to slow down Longview. I think Lancaster has enough offensively to score. I think we'll probably see our best offensive performance against Longview since they've done that, but I think we're going to see like a 49-21 kind of a game. And we're to a point where 21 is now a good offensive performance against Longview. So partially, I think you're going to get partial credit for your prediction. I think Lancaster will give us something offensively. I just don't think they're going to give us anything defensively. Not enough
to come close to winning. I'd love to give you an analysis of the Houston teams left, but they're all out. It was the 10 5A teams had the luxury of playing HISD in the first round, swept them, and then they went and got swept by everybody else. So there's not a Houston team in 5A Division I within 100 miles of Houston. So I got nothing to say to you
Well,
about that. So
I do want to at least kind of mention,
right.
because I know a lot of people said that Fulshire was going to be the team we had to keep an eye on. And A&M Consolidated beat them this past week, and we've already seen College Station against Lovejoy. I know it's 5A Division I versus Division II. We've seen College Station against Aledo the last year, and we've seen A&M Consolidated against College Station. We saw College Station win. Was Fulshire really a good enough team to potentially get there, or was they just got caught up by they are who they were?
No, they are who they were. They had a chance, but they've never been there before. And whenever the cards fall, like last year, they played. I forget who they played. That's Smithson Valley, and Smithson Valley, it just took a couple punches in the mouth. They're one of those teams, and we'll talk a little bit about it with Lake Creek. They're one of the teams that just demolishes teams with their offense. And if you shut down the offense, all of a sudden we got problems. And that's what happened with Fulshire. Their offense got shut down. They got two big plays, and then they had problems, and they were done. And now they're packing up their purple unis and waiting for.
And they got to come down to volleyball, so at least they had they got to do that. Basketball season, Fulshire, not going to win anything there because Plano East is the basketball team that you need to know about. We are at 1 hour now, so I keeping my ratio of one Plano East mention every 30 minutes here on the DFW podcast. Contractually obligated to do that. Thank you, Ward. Back to you.
Oh, I'm going to rip that contract up. All right, let's talk about Division II Emerson bracket. Guys coming on for our bobblehead this week, Michael Hawkins, is heading out to Mineral Wells to take on Wichita Falls Rider. What do you think about that game? I'll be present for the first half of that one, so I'll be able to see what Kendall Miller's got going on with that squad. But your thoughts on them? There's two
different narratives as far as that goes. We accurately picked Rider to beat Lake Dallas last week because I just didn't like the matchup. Rider has too many athletes, and Lake Dallas defensively, when they play good teams, the two teams they played this year, Argyle and Emerson, were able to kind of name their scores. And even Frisco Memorial was able to score an impressive amount against them that I wasn't expecting them to score. So I just feel like the matchups really lent themselves to a Lake Dallas loss and the Lake Dallas letdown, and the game really wasn't close. So now you might be looking at this and going, okay, we got Rider against an unproven Emerson team, because at the end of the day, Emerson has had 3 games of note, and they've only won one of them, and that was against Panther Creek. Panther Creek is still playing. We might talk a little bit about them coming up, but the 2 games of note, Argyle and Lake Dallas, they lost, and they haven't played anybody else of note. Canutillo is not a great playoff team, and then playing the 4 team in the first round, or playing Grapevine in the first round, wasn't really indicative of a high level. This is going to be the second best team they played this year after Argyle. Argyle is number 1, and then Rider is going to be number 2. And so we don't know if Emerson knows how to win, the mechanics, the mental state. Can they beat really good teams? We know they can play really good teams competitively. They played Argyle competitively. They played Lake Dallas competitively. They just could not finish either of those 2 games, but they were in both of those games. So right off the hand, I don't think Rider is going to come in here and blow them out. I think it's going to be a very close game. But at that same time, they got to learn how to close these games. So I think it's one of those situations, if it's a really close game, a 1 or 2 3-point kind of game, you kind of lean over to Rider, because Rider has learned how to close these games out. But I think if they can keep it at a 7-point spread or higher, they can not feel that pressure at the end of the day. And I think they have enough natural talent on their team with Hawkins and their good wide receiver to where they can stay up a touchdown on Rider. I think they're going to win a 42-35 kind of a game. Then we're going to get our rematch, Argyle Emerson, which is a spoiler alert of what you're about to tell me.
Will we get a rematch? I was going to say, are we? Because that's one of the most unrated teams that we've got in the Metroplex is Colleyville Heritage. We haven't talked word one about them pretty much at all this season because they had no comp really in their district, and the non-district.
And they lost Riley Wormley.
Game. Ennis was something. Yeah, and they lost Wormley, but they didn't lose Luke Aldrich, who's throwing the ball pretty well. He got 5 touchdowns last week. They're killing the first 2 teams they've played so far. And then when you flip it to the other side, they're playing Argyle. This is another game that I'll be at, one of my mini games this week. Argyle, if they're thankful for anything, they're thankful for their head coach, Todd Rogers, because it takes a coach like that to take the 2 beatings they took in the first year and still have first 2 games of the season, still have them believe in themselves to the point where now you've already penciled them in past Heritage here, as I just heard, and they got a young quarterback, McGuire Gasperson, who's just pitching it around left and right to their guys. He's 65% accuracy, and he won that game against Emerson for him, and he's playing great football. So tell me what you think about this game. I know you just said Argyle's going to win.
Yeah,
how are they going to win?
He doesn't realize what he's doing right now. He's just a kid having fun. He's a sophomore having fun. He doesn't realize that we're in the 3rd round of the Texas State high school football playoffs with all of this pressure. The stadiums are bigger. The lights are bigger. He's just out there being a kid having fun. And that's what you kind of mentioned, the coaching, that Coach Rogers has simplified things for him in a way to where he can have fun and just go out and do that. I got to give Colleyville Heritage some flowers, though, because they are playing at an incredibly high level at the right time of the year. They are, I used the term the last couple of weeks. I'll probably use it a few more. We're talking about your potential ceiling. Colleyville Heritage is playing right at their potential ceiling. They are giving you everything they've got right now. They are winning games with 70 points. They're doing it with defense. Their coach over there, coming from, I think, Harker Heights, is giving them the best chance to win the game. And they are playing, they have maximized that. And there is something important to be said about how good that is and how excited you have to be as a Colleyville Heritage fan that this new coach has gotten this much in the first year out of a team that we weren't expecting much out of. This Colleyville Heritage team is in the 3rd round of the playoffs, playing their best football at the right time. They're just not as good as Argyle at the end of the day. And it's going to be one of those situations, like you talked about, look at turnovers, look at penalties. That's going to tell you the story. Colleyville Heritage just can't win this game unless they get 3 turnovers in the special teams play, just because Argyle is that good. They're that good on the lines. They're that good on the secondary. They're that good at quarterback. Ulrich is playing out of his mind. They just don't have the athletes at the end of the day, and I think Argyle has to be considered a 14-point favorite. But all that being said, I'm really proud of Colleyville Heritage. That's one of those programs, when we talk about the campfire in April, wherever they get realigned, they're going to be a team we're talking about because of how they're playing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, and they've been on our air one time. That's how overlooked they've been from inside high school sports. But I'll be out there.
You're going to give them number 2. And if they win next week, you'll give them number 3, I bet.
Absolutely. I absolutely will. All right, lower side of the bracket. We've been waiting to talk about the little South Oak Cliff and Midlothian Heritage. South Oak Cliff, I guess they need to be thankful for, in my mind, they need to be thankful for B12 shots, because their fans need some B12 shots, because they were way too quiet for my liking against Melissa. I'm on the other side of the field because I had to show up late, and it looked like they had scored. The scoreboard said they scored, but I look up at the fans and it's just kind of blase. So they kind of need to get a little shot in the arm here. Are they getting used to just winning so much that they don't need to cheer for some of these big scores they got against Melissa, because they need to kind of bring it here in these next couple of weeks.
They were Instagramming, Ward. They had to go out there and get their selfies out there, and we're here, and it's us against everybody. It's us. It's inner city against the world. We're being disrespected. You're disrespecting them right now. Coach Todd's going to clip you talking about their fans, and you're probably going to be public enemy number 1 this week.
Shot of adrenaline, they'll be fine, because Coach Todd is doing a masterful job coaching this squad. And so you got to give him his flowers. I just need to get these fans excited, a little bit more excited, because remember in the state title games, just the atmosphere there. I just don't want them to get used to it, because winning the state title is a hard thing to do. You talk to Coach Todd, it's difficult to get 16 weeks in the season. So let's get a little bit more hype, man. Let me see what you got.
Got to give them the hype. A couple elements, and first I want to give a positive shout out to South Oak Cliff. And this is something that even an unnamed coach came and talked to me about during the game, who was scouting out there, how underrated South Oak Cliff special teams are. Their special teams are really, really good. And a lot of people just say, inner city, they're not going to have a good kicker. They're not going to have good special teams. That's our area where we can take advantage of them. And if you assume that, you would assume wrong. They've got a really good place kicker. They've got a really good punter. They're really sound. Melissa tried to run a trick play on them late in the 3rd quarter, early 4th quarter, and they got shut down by that. South Oak Cliff special teams is maybe one of the best special teams in the state at this point. So that's like a net positive for them. So shout out to South Oak Cliff and their special teams play. And that was really one of the factors on why they won this game, because at times they played very lackadaisical. It's like they were better than them, then they let Melissa back in the game. Then they kind of got mad, and then they let Melissa back in the game. Kind of similar to the Lovejoy game last year, where they just kind of like, we're better than them, and then they kind of got bored and let them back in the game. And you just can't do that. But they were significantly better than Melissa, and I think I got that out of the game. But the fact that Melissa played South Oak Cliff better than they played Lovejoy, yeah, that does show a little bit of an improvement. But to me, I think Lovejoy versus South Oak Cliff is going to be a much better game than maybe South Oak Cliff is expecting, because they look at Lovejoy the last couple of years and they just beat up Lovejoy. That's just kind of their, that's just who they play with. Like, we're not worried about Lovejoy. And this is a different Lovejoy team. And you talk about their fans being bored and expecting things and starting to have a bit of complacency. If their team has that kind of feeling against Lovejoy, it's going to get real quick against Lovejoy, because they are really good.
Yeah, I think this is a different team, and Coach Todd will see this. When you smacked them in the mouth the last 2 years, they folded quickly in the first half. They had rebuilt things and came back a little bit, but I don't think they're going to – if they score early on Lovejoy this time, I don't think they'll fold up like that. I think they'll come back and play. This week they're playing Midlothian Heritage, though. We kind of glossed over them. In my mind, all I'm seeing is the Heritage's game against Seguin, which I was at. They barely won 21-14. I didn't see anything in that game that made me think that they were come within 7 points of Sock like they did last year. I think this is a Sock 14 to 20 point win.
It very well could be, and we talked about it kind of what Byron Nelson had been playing really consistent football until they had their big game, and now they beat Southlake, and now 2 out of 3 weeks you kind of look at their scores and you're kind of like, well, what's going on there? Midlothian Heritage, and we'd even lauded them on this podcast for being a really consistent team, and then the Seguin game and now the Marshall game, that's 2 of their last 3 weeks. You're looking at that like, I don't know about that, and I think South Oak Cliff is probably at least a 2-score favorite over them, but Midlothian Heritage is going to give you a higher potential ceiling than I think even Melissa did, and I think they're going to play a little tougher in the lines, and I think they're going to have a couple of offensive schemes that I think will give South Oak Cliff a little bit of a problem that South Oak Cliff defensively will have to figure out how to get past. But at the end of the day, I can't see Midlothian Heritage scoring that 30 like they did last year. I think they're going to score 14. So then the question is, can their defense stop South Oak Cliff, hold them to 14 or less? Nah, South Oak Cliff's going to get 28 plus. So I think they're a 2-score favorite at least.
Very good point. Now, we've already talked about Lovejoy playing Sock in the next round. But I feel like the Texas High game will be a little bit of a challenge for them. But you don't think they'll be challenged too much to not win it?
Well, I mean, we talk about playoff Summit, and that game was 14-0 Summit in the second quarter, and we're like, okay, here comes playoff Summit again, and then Texas High shut them out and got 17 straight in that half. But for them to not show me that level of dominance, I needed style points in that game, and that was a 50-50 game against Summit. I needed to see them win that game like 35-14 or something, and just defeat Summit the way Midlothian Heritage defeated Summit. Beat them the way that Lovejoy beat Melissa. I think Lovejoy, again, we keep talking about they're getting healthy. Lovejoy is just a couple of weeks away from having 2 or 3 of their receivers back into that offense. And every week they play, they become a little bit more dangerous. And that core that they've got who's out there, Dalen McCutcheon is just playing out of his mind. Dalen McCutcheon, who should be going to Plano East, but that's neither here nor there. Murphy Middle School zone. He made Murphy Middle School great before finding his way over to Lovejoy. That doesn't happen anymore, Ward. People don't leave Plano East anymore. We've got Coach B over there making sure that all the middle schools feed properly into Plano East and taking care of business over there. Dalen McCutcheon is the one that got away, and you can see why. He is playing great for Lovejoy, but he's basically all they've got right now, but they're still finding ways to win with him, and they're winning with defense. And I think Texas High showed me that they got shut down to 17 against Mansfield Summit's defense. Lovejoy's going to take it to that next level. So we kind of talked about against Midlothian Heritage. I don't see Midlothian Heritage scoring more than 14 against South Oak Cliff. I don't see Texas High scoring more than 14 against Lovejoy, which means can Texas High hold Lovejoy's offense to 14 or less? No. So I think they're going to win it. I think we're going to see both scores very similar, 28-14 scores, both to determine the regional championship over here.
Excellent. And then you look on the Houston side of things. I talked to you a little bit about Lake Creek. They put up 70 a night, and they're taking on PNG, and I'm really excited about that. That's a 4:00 game. PNG obviously was the state runner-up in 5A Division II last year, and Lake Creek's got it's one of those deals, dude. You slow down the offense, you slow them down, but they got one of the better running backs in the state with Ty Byers, and their quarterback Eli Morcos is finding his guy Sam Lee all over the place, and they're just putting up video game numbers. What happens when that video game number of 70 points gets taken down to 20? That's where you get a little bit nervous. On the other side is you know how you threw Mansfield Timberview on me last year. Well, this year I threw Richmond Randall on myself in Houston because I don't have a digs down there, so I threw them on myself, and I've been riding with this team. It's a relatively new program. The head coach is the son of what the school is named after. So Brian Randall is the head coach down there, and he's got a freshman running back, Landon Williams-Callis, who is absolutely incredible. He's his cousin is Jaquise Rogers, who used to play in the NFL, and he's got offers from Alabama and all over the place as a freshman. He doesn't look like a freshman if you ever interview him. So they're playing Huntsville, a team they beat 2 weeks ago handily. So or 3 weeks ago in the last game of the season. So I expect them to probably beat them again. Move on to play either PNG or Lake Creek because I can't predict the winner in that one. I think that one game's going to be close. Let's do some quick hitters from 4A. How about that?
Well, let me just kind of point out one thing because I'm looking at a view of the state right now, and I'm looking at, like in Region 2, we got the District 5 champion, 6 champion, 7 champion, and 8 champion. But over here, 3 of these teams are in that 10-5A. You got Lake Creek, Randall, and Huntsville, who've all played each other already, and I guess Lake Creek already beat Randall. What was that Lake Creek-Randall game like in round 1?
That was earlier. That was earlier in the season when Randall hadn't got their footing, and I think they won by 15-20 in that one. So they weren't able to stop their offense that much either. PNG is the chance to stop that offense, and I don't know if they can. I think Lake Creek will probably beat Randall if they play them again. I hate to say that because I threw them on me. That's my squad, but I think that's what's going to happen in that one. But they got to get past PNG first. That's going to be a huge one. 4:00, so they may have sunlight issues, whatever you call that, sunrise issues, sunset
Well,
issues.
if you're in Houston, you have issues anyway. It's just you're waking up and you're in Houston, and that's your problem.
Hey, give me some quick hitters in 4A, especially that game that both of us will be at. I'll be there for second half and against Panther Creek, and talk a little bit about Solana Stephenville as well.
Well, I'm going to throw that at you and then throw a question on you. Region 1, we keep talking about. I think it's going to be Brownwood versus Decatur for the regional championship. Springtown has gotten much better, though. I see a couple of computer models that have Springtown over Brownwood, so we'll find out if Springtown got enough better. Coach Hewlett has done a really good job over at Springtown. Hopefully he does a good enough job to approve my credential over there because I'm going to go see a little small school football Friday afternoon. But I think Region 2, we really see the strength. You got Stephenville and Salina, and you got Panther Creek versus Anna. You got, kind of the new blood against the old blood. Down here in the bottom half of the district, we've got Panther Creek and Anna, the newer teams, and you got Stephenville and Salina, the old school teams. Salina's won that game in the past, so I think they're going to take care of business. Stephenville won it last year, but I think Salina will come back. And then Anna I think Anna's going to take care of Panther Creek. But the name I want your feedback on, if you have any feedback. I know you don't care about small schools. You put small schools plus Houston area, and we're just trying to figure things out. What is this Iowa Colony, and why should I care about them?
Iowa Colony is one of those new schools that's opened up like 2-3 years ago, and much like other schools that open up, they've kind of pulled talent from all the other schools, and they've pulled the good talent. It's a young team that's doing stuff, and they remind me a lot of Panther Creek about as far as they're going here without a lot of name recognition, and they're doing things. We'll have a camera at that game, but they have a quality offense. It's the defense that we'll see if they can slow down, but they can slow down Chapel Hill because those East Texas teams can play, especially that district. That's That's like the 11-6A and 21-6A of 4A,
Right.
right? That side of the thing. But they're a quality squad, and quickly over into 4A2 is Belleville over there. It's another team that we cover in Houston, and they're also they used to get to this round and then something trips them up. They kill everybody until they get to this round and they get tripped up. Well, they got Silsbee this week in 4A Division 2. We'll see if Belleville keeps on going.
I think the big game, and one area I was wrong about, even though we don't talk about it on the podcast, I thought Aubrey was going to get rolled by Van, and Sunnyvale played Gilmer very well, and now you got Argyle and Gilmer, or we got not Argyle, Aubrey and Gilmer. Gilmer will be a little bit of a favorite. Still, the game that'll be right before the Lovejoy Texas High game over at Pirate Stadium on Friday that you need to know about is Pleasant Grove against Carthage. That's kind of your main event. A lot of people think that's the state championship game right there. That'll be a fun game. We got to see Pleasant Grove against Brock earlier in the year. Now we got Pleasant Grove and Carthage. Pleasant Grove is a much better team than they were against Brock, and Carthage is Carthage. So if there's going to be a game that's going to trip Carthage up, it might be this game. But if they get past this game, I think they're going to have a pretty good run to the state finals.
That's a heck of a machine over there, Carthage. It's harder to jump in front of that train and not get bowled over. So I'll be keeping one eye on that score as well. Before I throw this humongous turkey into the oven here and get ready for Thanksgiving, tell me about some 3A, 2A games that kind of catch your eye.
In 3A, I mean, we're just Paradise versus Bushland is going to be kind of the big game in Region 1 this week. They are Bushland just destroyed Whitesboro last week, and Paradise is one of those teams, kind of like Waxahachie, where they played really good teams and then they haven't played anybody else. And when they played the really good teams, they didn't look so good. So how will they play against Bushland? We're going to have to figure that out. I got a chance to see Grandview against Pottsboro this past week. Grandview has no defense, but a really good offense. So I think we're going to see Winsboro versus Malakoff as kind of the game to watch. In 3A Division 2, we're still waiting for Canadian and Gunter. That's the game we're waiting for. 2 more weeks, and we're going to get that. In 2A Division 1, Toller is looking like the team. I think we're going to be covering them at state on Wednesday night at AT&T Stadium. So I'm excited about that.
Yes, sir. And you mentioned our Thanksgiving story, boy. I put an SOS call into Marley Merker over at Richardson ISD, and she came up with this great story. It was a 2-part deal. The Richardson players were first at an elementary school giving out thank you letters of appreciation to the parents that take their time out of the day to get their kids to school and make sure they're doing their homework and all that stuff. And people don't think about that, but it's a nice thing to hear you're appreciated, and especially from people that you go out and cheer on Friday nights. And then they did a donation where you had to give up, you had to donate some goods in order to come see this pie eating contest for at the Richardson coaches. They had volleyball coaches, football coaches. Coach Holloway wouldn't do it. He claimed he had a sugar rush the night before and he couldn't do it. I think he was just scared to go up against the guy that did end up winning it, which was the tight end coach Hayden Wall. Just destroyed this cherry pie. He must have won by like 3-4 minutes the way he ate the thing, and everybody else was just like needling through some pumpkin pie stuff. But it was interesting because she brought a huge box for donations. The thing overflowed, was falling out all over the place. So they really did a good job of giving back to a ministry charity that they gave back to. It's just a terrific idea. Marley pulled that thing together in like 2 days just because she knew we needed a nice Thanksgiving story, and it's going to be great. I just finished cutting it a little while ago. It's a terrific story. So if you want a feel-good deal in between 11 sets of highlights that we'll have on the show, that's the one to watch.
You want one set of highlights, kind of interesting. You kept talking, one of your ongoing things was talking about the sunset over at Choctaw. Well, since we've been taping this podcast, the sun is set, so I'm noticing how much darker it is behind me now. Because when I came to start the podcast, it was light, and now it's dark. So if you've seen the sun, Elton John once said, "Don't let the sun go down on me." Well, it did. So if you're a player, if you're a coach out there at the 3:30 game, be careful about that sun, because you see the havoc it can cause to a podcast. Imagine what it can do to a football game.
To a football game. Hey, everybody have a good Thanksgiving out there. Jigsy, I'm thankful for you doing this podcast with me. You've always been a good, trustworthy friend for me, so I appreciate you hanging through with these deals. I'm also thankful that you haven't browbeaten me too much this year. You just let me be my own person, let me do my own thing, and not killing me each and every week about my Commanders. Oh, wait a second. You do that. You're
I do it with love, and that's the end of the day. And what you do is you put music on and make the production value great. So sing us out, Wizzy, and we'll see you down the road.
We will see you down the road.